What if Trey Lance goes off during the preseason? Is that actually a bad scenario for Kyle Shanahan? Probably not for the 49ers, though. Some 49ers fans, yes. Some 49ers fans, no. And wading through some Trey Lance rumors as well on today's Locked On 49ers.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker with you as always at BD Peacock at Eric_Crocker on Twitter, on the threads. Find us on YouTube, of course, and everywhere you get your podcast. Make sure you are subscribed up, hit the notification bell, the thumbs up. We love you for it. We appreciate all of the everydayers out there on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And Croc, you brought up something interesting, and I never really thought of it through this lens. And we'll get to some trade stuff here in a second. But is it actually kind of more difficult for Kyle Shanahan if Trey Lance is awesome during the preseason? Because we've talked about how Brock Purdy gets a pass because he doesn't have to compete, because he did his competing in December last year for the starting job for the 49ers right now. And most people think it's for the backup job that Trey Lance and Sam Darnold are competing for right now, as long as Brock Purdy is healthy going into the season, and he will get the nod. But what if Trey Lance is awesome? How much pressure does that put on Kyle Shanahan? And is actually kind of a nightmare scenario for Kyle Shanahan if Trey Lance goes crazy during the preseason?
So that was my question, and I posted it on Twitter. And the crazy thing is, I don't even talk about 49ers really on Twitter anymore. I keep it for the pod, Locked On 49ers. Make sure y'all, subscribe to all that good stuff. But I keep everything here because we get to kind of talk through it and explain it. And on social media, you can put something and it can be taken 100 different ways. So I like that we're talking about it today and get to kind of expound on it. But ultimately, what I was saying is, I think we all know the old saying, if you have two quarterbacks, you have no quarterback, right? Like that's what people say. Now, I know from the 49ers standpoint, they went through a bunch of quarterbacks last year. So, you want better quarterbacks on the roster, a bunch of them, however many you potentially might need, because Kyle Shanahan, for whatever reason, these quarterbacks aren't staying healthy for him. But in the case of this, you're looking for your franchise guy. And I think we've made it very clear. I don't think that there's anything Trey Lance can do during training camp or preseason to outduel what Brock Purdy did in the regular season and playoffs. So Trey Lance can do whatever. It just won't be enough, in my opinion. I don't think there's enough that he could do. So knowing that, if Trey Lance does go and light it up, and all of a sudden you're just seeing somebody that is, oh man, like this is what we've been wanting to see. He's taking all the steps in the right direction. I mean, he's getting the ball in his hands. He's big arm. He's stretching the field, throwing the ball down the field, all that good stuff. But he's not missing any of the layups. All those things that you've been wanting to see, and he's just lighting it up every day. You got Mayogo and Barrows and Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker reporting and Grant Cohn. This guy is lighting it up. I feel like that creates a quarterback controversy that to start this offseason, it's not a controversy. It's Brock Purdy's job. So Brock Purdy, now a guy who still has a limited sample size, even though we know much more about him than we do Trey Lance, he's supposed to just be the guy. And I think Kyle and any other coach around the league, they just want their guy. They don't want to have to deal with multiple guys, like having to look at them through the lens of being a starter. So, if Trey does come in and light it up, and that's very well could happen. The game starts slowing down for him. He's been working with Jeff Christensen. He's already been, they act like this guy's just been this terrible quarterback. He's been up and down, but there's been a lot of good. So if he just gets a little bit better, what does that look like? And I think that's something that can potentially make it a little bit more controversial for Kyle Shanahan.
Even worse, Croc, what if Trey is just okay and is solid or whatever during camp and during practices, and he's good enough to be the backup and maybe even beat out Sam Darnold, but not amazing. But during the preseason games, he goes crazy, because that's what the fans will see. And that's what will have the fans in a frenzy and the media in a frenzy. And those highlights will be everywhere. And in Kyle's mind, he might not even think that he's having that good of a camp, but in everybody else's mind, he'll be going crazy, right? That's even a more difficult situation for Kyle, because then if you sit that guy down, you look like you're an insane person.
I would say that Kyle doesn't care about whatever the perception of the outside is. If for him and the way that he wants his offense to run, if you're not doing that consistently in practice, but you may have a few highlight throws in preseason games, I don't think that's going to outweigh or undo whatever he's been seeing in practice. So I don't think that's what will move him, and I don't think he gives a dang about anything that the media or what the fans think. Now, I mean, obviously,
it'll change the way he gets questions, and then he'll be annoyed by the questions when he has to answer them at the podium. Probably that's about it. Yeah,
I think ultimately that was where my question was going. Just does he want to stop having to deal with the yo-yoing between the quarterback position and just this is my guy? Like we're behind Brock Purdy, leader in the clubhouse, all that good stuff, right? Played extremely. I just love what he did. It just throws a wrench in it because all of a sudden the guy that you invested a ton in, I mean, a lot of draft picks, and now he's looking like what you wanted him to look like. But it's like, well, we're committing to this guy.
In year 3, this is when it's kind of all supposed to happen for Trey Lance too, right? Like last year, he was supposed to get a lot better, but still first-year starter, maybe some hiccups, maybe some growing pains. Year 3, this is what we saw from so many quarterbacks in the past. This is what we saw from Joe Montana started being good in year 3. Josh Allen started being good in year 3. Jalen Hurts started being good in year 3. So this is the year. And so I don't think it should shock anyone if Trey Lance looks a lot better this year either. And how good, here's the other part of it, is how good does he have to look for Kyle to think about starting him over Brock Purdy? Is it even possible?
I don't think it's possible. That's what I'm saying. Because again, unless he does it again, now that would be another nightmare for Kyle. And I say nightmare. Some people might say, no, Craig, that's a good problem to have. Let's look at it like women, right? Maybe there's this young lady that you dated a couple years prior, and it's like, man, she looks great, but she's just a little immature. And then you go on and you date this more mature girl who, maybe doesn't look as attractive, but man, has a lot of good qualities. And then all of a sudden, the girl that was immature with, she's a 10. Now all of a sudden she's more mature, smart, got all her stuff together. I think it makes it difficult because, like, man, I really did like her. Okay, I have this person, and you're gonna always kind of look over your shoulder, and she's gonna it'll probably make her a little insecure, right? The girl that you're with now, it's like, man, you used to take her and look what she's doing. So that's the other part to this. If you are Brock Purdy and you see what Trey Lance is doing, and man, that's great. But the moment you throw a bad pass, the moment you have a bad game, which happens, it happens for everybody. You just have a bad game. You throw some bad passes, right? You have a stretch where you don't play as well because Brock Purdy, he still has a very limited sample size, and he's going to get better. Right? I would assume he's going to get better. But in the process of getting better, everything's just not perfect. You have some ups and downs. Well, when you have a guy that's lighting it up, and now that girl who is a little immature, she's kind of caught up, and you start kind of messing up, do you start looking over your shoulder a little bit? And then how does that make you play in that scenario? And I know it's just the business side of things, but typically most of these teams, they don't deal with that. It's Kirk Cousins is my quarterback. It's Jalen Hurts, that's our quarterback. Tua, he's our quarterback. Like most of the time, it's just whoever your quarterback is, that's who your quarterback is. They're not looking over their shoulders if they have a back. Jimmy Garoppolo, when he threw 3 interceptions and a pick 6 against the Minnesota Vikings and you lose on the road week 1, it doesn't matter. That's my quarterback. But if Brock Purdy goes out week 1 against the Pittsburgh Steelers and Trey Lance just lit up training camp in preseason and Brock goes out and throws 3 picks and then pick 6 and you lose the game, it's going to be loud, the chatter and whatever, business side of things, cool. But that's just tough on the quarterback. Yeah, that's tough on Brock.
You want to say that a tight locker room doesn't matter to the coach, doesn't matter to the players. George Kittle's tired of hearing about it. You know what I mean? There's players in the locker room that are tired of hearing about it, and probably some guys that have a favorite guy here, a favorite guy there. Probably a lot of them liked what they saw from Brock Purdy, and he's a favorite. But then if someone starts getting them the football, let's say Brandon Ayuk's, we talked about in the last offseason about how his connection with Trey Lance looked pretty strong. So what if that connection is really strong in the preseason? Lance is throwing bombs to Brandon Ayuk, and Ayuk's over here in the locker room thinking, man, I hope it's Trey Lance. And George Kill's like, I hope it's Brock Purdy, and so that's why they always say that having two quarterbacks is really heaven none, because of the scenarios laid out with all the other teams with like, that's our quarterback and that's it. It's just a lot easier for everybody involved.
And I've been in a locker room where there was a quarterback competition with Geno Smith and Mark Sanchez. And I would say that the conversation surrounding that is a lot louder on the outside than it is inside. Inside, the talk was non-existent. Like, we could care less. Everybody just wants to win. I'm pretty sure that's where the 49ers are. And they're just like, well, yeah, we want to win. But, I don't know. The 49ers are a little different, because when Trey Lance came in through a touchdown against Detroit, they're like, oh, we don't like that. So they might be a little bit more voiceful. Like, oh, no, you're undermining Jimmy Garoppolo. We're bringing the kid in. Kind of like, oh, all right. So I don't know. That locker room might be a little different, but the locker rooms I've been in, most guys don't care. They just want to win. So, whether it's Brock Purdy or Trey Lance or whatever, it don't matter. Like, just win games. They just feel like it's more Brock Purdy because they've won a bunch of games with him. And
would they all be better off if there was none of that distraction and if the 49ers just traded Trey Lance before the 100%. Season started? And there has been some rumors, Croc. I want to talk about this next. This is our next topic here. Is about Trey Lance trade partners. Is there a dance partner out there for the 49ers and potentially sending Trey Lance to that team next? Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Take your first swing at betting Major League Baseball on FanDuel and get 10 times your first bet amount in bonus bets up to $200. That's right. Just bet $20 and you'll land $200 in bonus bets, win or lose on that first bet. That's $200 you can spend betting everything from money line to over-unders on baseball games to who's going to hit the first home run. And now that the All-Star game is over, there's baseball every stinking day until November, all in an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. And not only Major League Baseball, of course, you can bet on a ton of NFL props to start the season. How about season award props? 40-1 for Brock Purdy to win the MVP, 50-1 for Trey Lance to win the MVP, and about 100-1 for Sam Darnold. So whether it's baseball, whether it is NFL football, you can find it all on America's #1 sports book, FanDuel. Sign up today and visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get up to $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official partner of Major League Baseball. Hey, Croc, in this love scenario, this like love interest scenario you were breaking down earlier, who is Sam Darnold in that?
Oh man, I don't.
That's just like third wheel hanger on or a contender.
He's definitely the side.
Kyle bought a ring, right? And he was about to give it to somebody, and then all of a sudden Brock Purdy came out of nowhere and kind of stole his heart. And so it's like, okay, he's got to give that ring to somebody, but he's dating Sam Darnold too now.
No, he's not dating Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold is the side chick. So there was the girl that you dated that you really like and had the potential. Yeah, Brock Purdy, who is like, okay, I'm ready to settle down with this person. But Sam Darnold's just a side chick. So it's like, well, he's just there whenever you need him. So it's like, hey, I need you right now. Like, all right, here I come. Knows his role. Won't step outside of anything. Doesn't expect anything more than whatever his role is. I don't condone having side chicks. I'm married, and we're going on 8 years of marriage. But, just from what I see, other people.
We're talking about, we're talking about Kyle stepping out right now with his quarterbacks. He's got 3 or 4 of them in the fold at this point. We only talk about what Brandon Allen is to Kyle Shanahan right now in that scenario. So Trey Lance,
the escort.
You were about to say something, Croc, before the break about Trey Lance and if the Niners might be better off trading him to avoid all the nightmare stuff we were talking about.
To avoid the nightmare, I think a lot of fans would tell you, well, you can never have enough good quarterbacks. The 49ers, look what they went through last season. So why would you want to, if Trey Lance is balling, man, that is amazing. Just keep him around. And it's like, man, there's just all these other things that go with it. I would say trade him. Get something for him. If they like Sam Darnold as much as they do, and again, I would assume that you see a better version of Sam Darnold in this offense. Well, okay, you like Brock Purdy, he's great, he's your starter. Everyone, I think I'd say 90% of my followers assume, oh man, Brock Purdy, he's the guy, and they love him. So if you love him as much as you do, and it seems like a lot of people are high on Sam Darnold in this offense and just looking better, and then the Allen guy and what he could be, then okay, go ahead and trade Trey Lance and see if you can get something for him. Because if he does light it up in training camp, light it up in preseason, there is a chance that there's some suitors that are like, maybe, you know what, we'll take him. We'll take him off your hands a little bit if he's going to keep playing like that.
Do you think Trey Lance is on the 49ers right now if Brock Purdy didn't get hurt? Do you think he would have been traded already before the draft?
I believe that he would be on the 49ers because I don't believe he had a trade value. That's what they're saying. And or whatever his value might have been, probably wasn't enough for the 49ers to be like, all right, we're comfortable moving off. Because you do risk, oh man, you trade him away for a fifth round pick, which they probably would say is too low. I would say right now, hey man, you get third or fourth round pick, and it's not that bad. But let's say it's a fifth round pick, a team is willing to just take a flyer on Trey Lance for, and then he balls out, which again, it can happen. Like he has at the NFL level shown you, I can do everything. I just have to be more consistent. So if he does the splash he throws and the downfield and all that, and then he's just more consistent hitting the other stuff, and it's a coach that isn't maybe as much of a hard ASS as maybe Kyle is at times, and he's just like, hey man, make your mistakes. It's fine. I understand. You'll make just kind of loosen up. Then all of a sudden you start seeing Trey Lance just throw the ball all around. He's flying around, all the good stuff. It'll look bad on the 49ers organization if you only gave it that up for a fifth round pick.
So there was a rumor at the end of last week, and Croc, you asked me if something we should talk about on the podcast, and I didn't think there was enough teeth to really talk about it. And I don't even know who reported it, but it was something about Trey Lance and that the Atlanta Falcons would potentially be interested in trading for Trey Lance. I have the perfect team in my mind for Trey Lance, and I think you have the perfect team in your mind for Trey Lance.
And we have not discussed who that perfect team is.
We have not either. We have not. But it really got me thinking, okay, if I'm not buying this rumor, like, and I think we both agreed that it was like Falcons. No, that was a pre-draft move. They've got Ritter now. He's their second year guy. He's ready to go. You play it out with Ritter, then you see what you have next offseason. It wouldn't make sense to bring in Trey Lance now to compete with Desmond Ritter unless there's something you saw from him in spring practices. And I don't think spring practices could ever show you enough to make you think, oh, now we got to move off a guy when we believed in him before the draft and didn't make a move then. So for that reason, the Atlanta Falcons don't make any sense to me at all as a trade partner. But I think part of the connection there was that maybe that the Falcons loved him and would have taken him number 4 overall instead of Kyle Pitts in the 2021 NFL draft, and that they still have high, a high evaluation of him. So that's kind of the thought there. But to me, the Falcons don't make sense. And I think you agree, right, Croc?
I do agree. Do you want to do like a countdown and review, and we'll say who we think at the same time?
No, because, well, it depends how we phrase this and how we put this out there, because I can't come up with a team that I think is a good trade partner for Trey Lance. I have in mind will not be trading for Trey Lance, but it's the best fit for Trey Lance.
To me, it all comes down to what's looming over everyone's head, and that's Caleb Williams coming out next year. So that's the thing right there, where it kind of, no matter what team you are, where you're at right now, it's hard unless maybe you have like a good veteran and it's just, man, the veteran's not playing very well. So then, okay, let's trade for Trey Lance and just see what he has middle of the year, because we're not going to be good enough to, trade. We're not going to be good enough with that veteran quarterback. We're not going to be bad enough. We're not going to be bad enough to get Caleb Williams. So, but we're not going to be good enough to where it's like, I'm kind of done with this veteran guy.
Yeah. So they're going to be drafting middle of the first round at worst. So they could go get a young quarterback now, knowing that they're not going to be picking number 1. They're not going to be messing with that quarterback anyway in the draft next year.
Correct.
So who's your team?
Washington Commanders.
That's a good one. They were interested in the last 49ers quarterback. According to some reports, it would have been Jimmy Garoppolo and not Carson Wentz that was traded to the 49ers if Garoppolo didn't have that surgery he needed on his shoulder 2 off seasons ago.
Sam Howell's their quarterback right now.
Yeah, Sam Howell.
And then there's Jacoby Brissett after him, I believe.
Well, hold on now. Sam Howell was drafted 2 rounds ahead of Brock Purdy, the guy that Trey Lance already can't beat out.
I don't know if it's that Trey Lance. Well, when you say Trey Lance can't beat out Brock Purdy, he can't beat out what Brock Purdy did in regular season games. We don't know if Kyle just opened it up as a true quarterback competition, what that might look like.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we could assume like, well, this guy might be more efficient, this and that. But if Trey Lance takes a slight step up and just being more consistent on just seeing the field just a little quicker, what would that look like in a competition? And that's what you have to assume. Again, year 3, kind of maybe the offensive stuff slowing down a little bit for him. He has been seeing like kind of a sports psychiatrist a little bit, or I don't want to put words in his mouth, but that was what he alluded to, right? Like some things that might just help him. So clear mind, I get it a little bit more, and all right, boom, I'm ready to go. And Brock Purdy now, where he has to go up against number 1 defense, etc. But we have seen him in regular season games did well. But what would that competition look like? So there is no, in my eyes, there is no competition, but not because Trey Lance can't or won't beat him out. It's because of what Brock did. Trey can't beat out in camp what Brock did
right
in the regular season. So going to Sam Howell, like there is a chance for Trey. There's a shot. Oh yeah, I come in and I can beat this guy out, throwing to Terry McLaurin and all these other receivers, Diami Brown, and these receivers they have.
Yeah, I'll buy it. He could beat out Sam Howell. Jacoby
I forgot the rookie. Who's the rookie last year they drafted? He killed it.
Jahan Dotson.
All right, come on.
Jacoby Brissett's the backup too, right?
Yes.
So that would be a nice little competition. There's a veteran in there, a couple of young guys, a lot of physical talent, and they got a lot of first rounders on defense there. And their team that's probably a little too good to be drafted in top 5, right? Even in worst case scenario, they're probably more like a top 10 draft team, and maybe even they're even with Sam Howell maybe flirting with a playoff spot. And even if Howell falls on his face, Jacoby Brissett should be able to keep him in a place like where the top 15-ish, top 10 to 15-ish, even if things don't go well for Washington. So that's a good one. I like that one a lot, Croc. Next, I'm going to drop my team that I think is the best fit for Trey Lance that he 100% will not be getting traded to. Thanks again, everybody, for making Locked On 49ers your first listen every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. We appreciate you. If you want to be an everydayer, subscribe up on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcasts. So, Croc, the best team by a long shot, not for the 49ers as a trade partner, but for Trey Lance is none other than Pete Carroll's Seattle Seahawks. That is the perfect place for Trey Lance.
It is.
And there's really not he could end up there, but he would have to be through a third party where he goes, fails there, then ends up with Seattle. And because the 49ers definitely not trading him to the Seattle Seahawks. But man, I feel like that is, veteran Geno Smith that had a nice half a season, but Geno Smith, is he that good, right? Like he's had one good half season it was a great half season that he had. And he was, pretty good for kind of the second half, but not that good. What's it going to look like this year with Geno Smith, right? They're going to be too good to be drafting high. And Pete Carroll's, the atmosphere for Pete Carroll, I just feel like it could be a really nice fit for someone like Trey Lance. That is the spot, but he'll never get to the Seattle Seahawks, or at least not in an easy soon way.
There are some people that believe if Trey Lance doesn't do well in preseason or training camp, there's somehow you can release him. And if you do release him, then you risk him going to a team like Seattle, where I think Pete Carroll, who wants to run the ball, wants to do those things, would say, hey, Geno, put this guy. Geno said if they draft a receiver in the top, or a quarterback in the top 5 or top 7, whenever their pick was, if they drafted Anthony Richardson, he didn't even make it there, but if you drafted one of those guys, hey man, I'm more than willing to mentor those guys and teach them everything I know. So if they were to sign Trey Lance who was just waived, would you have to claim him? Would you have to clear waivers?
I believe you do have to clear waivers if you are on a rookie contract.
Oh, that's tough.
But he's got a lot of money, and he's got guaranteed money on his deal.
Oh, so they might just be like, let's like.
So it's sort of a weird situation for Lance. The Niners probably wouldn't cut him because if he cleared waivers, they would eat a ton of guaranteed salary. So I think it's kind of trade or nothing for Trey Lance for the 49ers.
Okay, so
the way I read it.
Well, that kind of, yeah, he won't be a Seattle Seahawks.
But next season, I think it's a lot more palatable to cut him, post June 1st and all that. He'll be going into the last year of his deal next year. And at that point, you're not going to pick up his 5th-year option either. So, it'd be a lot easier.
Seahawks would be a great spot for him.
Yeah.
Not for the 49ers if somehow he turns it around.
Even the Rams would be a good spot for him too.
The Rams, yeah. And that might help. You know what? Listening, and I don't think we talked about it, but listening to that the Play Caller podcast.
Yeah.
Kyle Shanahan, when he calls a play, he kind of just expects you to know it and just be precise with the timing, etc. And McVeigh is kind of the opposite, where he kind of holds your hand through it. And I don't know if one way is better than the other. I would assume just having a coach call the play and then, all right, like you've been prepped all week, you know what to do with it. But then McVeigh is different. He calls the play, and until the mic cuts out, he's talking to you and telling you kind of where to throw the ball. And they were saying that really helped Jared Goff a lot.
Yeah, and Goff needed it and liked it. And I know some quarterbacks don't like it. Remember there was a story that Shanahan was doing that with Nick Mullins.
Yeah, I remember that.
And Nick Mullins like yelling, "Shut up," but he can't hear him back. It's a one-way radio. He's yelling, "Shut up" in the huddle because he wants Kyle to shut up so he can relay the play and do his own thinking. But Kyle's talking him through it. And so I think Kyle does do that. I don't know if he does it as much as Sean McVay does. But yeah, there's just so many factors for an NFL quarterback. I can't imagine.
So many. I mean, and listening to them talk about quarterback position or anybody, if you've ever just listened to people talk about plays, and have you watched Quarterback yet on Netflix?
I started watching the first one. I haven't gotten through it.
All right. When they start talking about just the play calls, the verbiage of it, and Kirk Cousins, man, such a great guy on that show, but how he goes about his preparation, it's pretty intense as a quarterback. Even Mariota, I think Mariota's wife, one of them, was it Cousins, Mariota? One of them listens to it. Oh, Cousins goes through his notes, reads off the plays and records it. And then as he's driving, he listens to the recording of the play and then has to visualize what he would do in that situation. I'm like, that's a lot.
I like that. That is pretty wild. They've got all the virtual reality stuff now too, so you can go through plays and go through decisions even when you're not at practice. It's pretty amazing.
Now you do all that, and Kirk Cousins, there's a lot of good. There's also some kind of weird moments. You could see, I think he got hit a little too much. He kept getting up. He was extremely tough, but it definitely changed the way that he played.
In one game, or you mean his career?
That season.
Oh, just last season. Okay.
You'll see. He's going to be, you'll see him in pain. He was in so much pain one time, he couldn't even talk to Adam Thielen. Adam Thielen comes up to him and he's like, "Hey, what you see?" And he's like, "I don't know." But have you ever been in so much pain and somebody's trying to ask you something while you're in pain and you're like, just stop. I'm not focused on whatever you're talking about.
Yeah.
And, he was just every time he came back to the sideline, just in so much pain. I said, goodness gracious.
Croc, I know you went through this. Have you seen the recent research where that completely debunks the old football coach thing where they say, don't put your hands on your waist. You're supposed to put your hand over your head and you're having trouble breathing and you're super tired. And the scientists came out and were like, dude, that's totally wrong. You should definitely bend over. Whatever feels natural, bend over and get some air into your lungs and have your hands on your waist. And the coaches are totally screwing you up by making you put your hand on your head. And when I heard that, I loved it. I just stood up and applauded. I was like, yes, of course. I know that. Every single player who's ever played knows that because that feels better to do that.
Well, but there's a psychological aspect to it. And shout out to my guy, Antonio Cromartie. When we were doing any type of running, sprints, conditioning, he would tell the DBs, don't put your hands on your hips. Don't bend over, nothing. Because you don't want to let your opponent know that physically there's something going on with you because
Oh,
they
I
will
100%.
attack that.
But the whole like putting your hands over your head thing, it's just like one coach heard that once and
Yeah.
he told another coach, and it was like, this is the way that it's going to be until the end of time now because we say so. And
I think it's a mental thing, though. I think it's a mental.
that's not why, at least for me, that's not why the coaches were doing it. They weren't like, don't show your. They were like, this will help you. Put your hands over your head. Don't bend over. Like this is the way to catch your breath, not the other way. It wasn't so much of a because you wouldn't want to put your hands like Cromartie wouldn't want the DBs putting their hands on top of their head either. You could tell you're sucking wind doing that too. Just the same, right? You just want to act like, yeah, I'm good. Right. I totally get that. Yeah.
And that's how I train my athletes. I try to get them to like if you train that way, then it becomes easier to do that in the game. And for me, what really always helped was the catching my second wind when I would see someone tired. Like once I see you tired, it's like, oh yeah, I got you where I want you. Now I'm doing all kind of little stuff. And you'll see Patrick Mahomes. Now he's the wrong person to try, but I can't wait till you get to the episode with the Raiders and Mason Crosby. And Crosby's just doing all like just always touching him, punch him in the chest. And Mahomes is a little grittier than I was expecting, but he still has that kind of like entitled aspect to it where he wants to complain a lot. He wants to complain, but he also is like a dog out there. It's
the voice. Cool to watch. Gotta be the voice.
But oh man, the voice is. My wife was like, why does he talk like that? I'm like, I don't know. Everybody says he sounds like
I can't imagine what their kids are going to sound like with how his wife sounds and how he sounds. And you put that together. Can you imagine?
Has the high-pitched voice and he got
imagine the high-pitched frog coming out of that.
Oh man, yeah. But he so Mason Crosby kept hitting him like and just touching him after plays, bumping him, like just letting him know he's there. And he's like, come on, dog. Why you got to punch me in my shoulder, man? You're just taking it too far. And it's like, it's not too far. You're like, that's what you're supposed to be doing. But then he threw a touchdown pass, and then after that, he's like, yeah, you know, woke me up. I'm the wrong guy. I'm the wrong whatever. I'm the wrong. And it's just like Kermit going crazy. Kermit the Frog going crazy. And I was like, hey, he's a dog. He's a dog out
there. Speaking of pass rushers, though, last note here, Nick Bosa signing. It feels imminent. A lot of big signings happening around the NFL as camp gets closer, and the deadline of camp and the holdouts and the posturing there can help get deals done. We've seen multiple big deals that the 49ers have done late in July's getting ready for camp. Hope it doesn't happen. I think Croc's actually checking to see if it happened while we were recording this podcast. I'm going on vacation, so we're recording this podcast a day early. I hope Nick Bosa doesn't sign in the next 48 hours. But if he does, Croc, over under, we were asked this question, over under Aaron Donald's annual salary plus $1 million. What do you got? Aaron Donald, by the way, signed a 6-year. Where is it? 6-year. I cannot find the total value now anymore. It's 3-year, $95 million contract. So his annual salary is $31.7 million essentially per year. So over under $32.7 million per year for Nick Bosa.
Over. Isn't that what's predicted by like the numbers guys? Aren't they saying around 33?
PFF, when we had him on, he's like, it's going to be over 30. He thought more like 31. It's been some time since I don't know what the exact date was here that Donald signed a 3-year, $95 million contract. 2022. So it wasn't that long ago. So I don't know. Bosa was defensive player of the year. He's for sure going to ask for more than that, but I don't know if he's going to get much more than 33. So there's not much wiggle room to take the over on that. But it's hard to take the under knowing that he's going to for sure get more than 30 million. It's just a question of, does he get 31? Does he get 32? Does he get 33? That's where he's going to be.
I'm saying he's closer to 33 than he is 31.
Okay. I'll buy that. Yeah, I'll definitely buy that. 32 and a half.
32.2.
That would be under though. That would be under because 31.7 would be the push. So it would have to be over 31.7 to be the over. 1 million more than Aaron Donald per year.
Ooh. Okay, 33. I'm going 33. We're 33. All in.
Okay. the over $33 million a year. And we'll see if Croc is right. And if that has already happened, then maybe we've already done an emergency podcast if it happens in the next 8 hours. If not, Croc and I will be back to cover it all. Croc and Wink are going to be doing a Winky Wednesday pod as well. We'll talk to you then, right here, Locked On 49ers.
Subscribe to this video.